Today we're going to look at filtration in a shrimp only tank. We'll have a look at mixed tanks as well, where people keep nano fish and shrimp and the different types of filter. But primarily I want to concentrate on the types of filters that I use and why I use them. So probably my go-to is the under gravel filter. The reason I use the under gravel filter is simply because I find them really easy. It allows me to put a thin layer of substrate on, because 90%, 95% of the substrate is in the UGF box itself, the under gravel filter box itself, and I find them really easy for resets, especially if you've got like an ammonia leaching soil. So what you can do, or a non-ammonia leaching for that matter, so what you can do, you can actually cycle these in a bucket with an airline, put some bacteria in. If it's an ammonia leaching, keep testing that bucket, doing water changes like you would in another tank, and then you literally just swap them out. So obviously I've got a few of them, so I've got a spare one, and I just swap that out and repeat the process. Having such a small layer of soil on the substrate doesn't allow for build-up of toxins, and likewise if I do reset, I can simply siphon that soil off very quickly, probably in one water change, 10 maybe 20%, dependent on how thick I've got the layer and how big the tank is. But that would be my primary one. So let's have a look at a UGF box. So these are the UGF boxes that we sell. They come with a protective coating, so you just peel those off. That's on all four sides and the base, and then inside what you have is your UGF plate cut to size. So it's quite a deep UGF plate. You can obviously see this once the side's off, and within that you've obviously got your uplift tube. And what I do is I take the grid out the bottom so you get a better flow. What I do like about these is obviously you can fill them up with soil. You can also cycle these separately, so if you've got an ammonia leaching soil, you can cycle it with some Bacter in a bucket, keep doing your water change on the bucket and testing it till it's cycled, and then replace one that you've got in the tank. So obviously I've got a few spare. What's also nice with these, in my opinion, is because I drop that filter at the bottom, if you take the middle pipe out, you can drop a pipe down here and siphon any build-up that you get below the filter plate out. Give it a little tap, get that sort of siphoned out, as much of that as possible, stopping those sort of little fine particle build-ups of waste. What's also really nice about these, in my opinion, is the fact that you can obviously view that. Ammonia leaching soils or non-ammonia leaching soils are using these. So the next more widely used, I suppose these are the next more widely used of all the types of filters that I use in shrimp tanks, are the double sponge. So these are the types of double sponge that I sell. They are quite a big one. There are cheaper ones on the market, but I like these just simply because I think that the sponge itself is quite big and quite porous. They're quite a loose-ish sponge. I sell them also in single. So for smaller tanks you can use the single type, and again it's quite a big sponge, but it doesn't take up massive amounts of room. What I like about these is, especially with the double sponges, you can clean one, take it out and clean it. I mean, you can clean both of them if you clean them in tank water, but if you really want to scrub one out and give it a really good clean under a tap, potentially if you're using a double, you could clean one. Make sure you clean it and dip it in RO water or tank water before it goes back, or use dechlorinated water when you're cleaning it. But that's sort of the benefit of those, and they're quick, they're simple, they're easy to use. I've usually got one knocking around in a tank extra, so if I do need to set up a tank quickly, I've got a filter that's already cycled. So that's the benefits of double sponges. There are my double sponges in use, and in this one I've got 2 singles, but you can barely see that. So this is a Matten filter, as you can see. Apologies if there's a reflection here. As you can see, it sort of uses the whole width of the tank there. And then if I just quickly show you sort of behind that, what I've got there is I've got an uplift. So there's a space behind there, really useful if you're using heaters and stuff, because you can sort of drop all your stuff there and it leaves the tank free. And you can probably just see by the flow at the top there that that's obviously uplifting, and then what's happening is all the water is being drawn through there. But see how many shrimp are on that piece of filtration? So they do graze on it, you know. It's a useful filter. It is a really useful filter. So I do sell them. I'll show you them in the sort of base form, and you cut them to size, and I'll give you some tips and tricks with that as well. And then in my lowboy tanks, I've sort of got a similar thing to a Matten filter, but there's a glass box here, well, a glass panel, and then there's a hole in the glass panel, but it works the same as that type of filter. So this is the Matten filter. They come 35 centimetre by 35 centimetre, and you cut them to size. And then once you've got them cut to size, I'd recommend you cut these with a very sharp blade and use a rule. So as you cut them, measure them, cut them slightly over. So when you push them into the slots, they've got a bit of compression. And then in the center, what I tend to do is just cut a slot, drop my filter down, my uplift tube down to where I need it, and sometimes I'll cut a little bit more out for that to fit in, but to be honest, I've never found I needed that. I've done it on a couple, I think, that I've used in the past. So this is how these come. I often send them bent in packaging just to save on packaging, and if when you get them and they're bent, they stay bent, you just put them in a bath of warm water and they'll go back to size. So that's the Matten filter. My final one, if I can find it, I've got it somewhere. So my final one is like a take on the Matten filter, and it's called a Hamburg Matten Tower. So these are the ones I use. When I started shrimp keeping, I bought these. So this is a Matten Tower. This particular one's got glass on the bottom. I don't sell these, by the way, but I bought quite a few, so I still use them and they last ages. It's a tower. You get them in various sizes, and then within the top, what you have is an uplift tube. So this is bored out in the side. You've got a plug and an uplift tube that you connect an airline to. Now, what I will say about all of the uplifts is the collars, and they're slightly different on the ones I sell. This one has 2 O-rings, so every so often you have to take that collar off, clean the little micro holes in there. I'll show you actually. This is easy to show you. So there's 2 O-rings. I'm not sure if you guys can see that. Some micro holes, so I tend to put a brush up those, a bristle brush, and then sort of poke them out. You can use obviously a safety pin or something, and then you put it back on. I tend to use the back end of a spoon to do this, to push the O-rings in place. So I'll show you me doing this. So they don't seat brilliantly, and you probably struggle to do those with your fingers. So what I do is I get like a teaspoon, the back end of a teaspoon, to push these round and make sure that's sort of in the right place. But to clean these, pretty easy. You simply take it out of the tank, put it in a bucket of water, press it down a few times, and you get it relatively clean, probably as clean as you'd get a sponge filter, a normal sponge filter. So I don't sell these, but I use them, and this is a brand new one, so I bought quite a few for personal use before I started the business, and I've got them still, so I still use those. They're called Hamburg Matten Towers. If you like the idea of those, then go and have a search on the internet, and you'll potentially find someone who's selling those. Other types of filters are power filters. Now, I don't use these at all. I do sell them because I sell aquatics products. I don't use them for shrimp simply because baby shrimp get stuck in the intakes, and unless you can get an intake guard for them that doesn't restrict flow, I wouldn't recommend this type of filter for a shrimp tank. Not even a shrimp, a tank that's got shrimp and fish in if you keep nano fish, just simply because they'll get stuck in there. Okay, if you only keep monos, because they although they have babies, they won't live in fresh water, so the bigger monos won't get sucked into the filters on those. And then finally, the last filter that I do use in a tank in the house, and I have had shrimp in there with it, I use external filters. I'm a fan of the Oazi brand. For internal, I don't use that. So the heater's in the filter, the heater's in the filter, and all your filtration's in the filter. The only thing I do differently is I use a filter guard. So I like the stainless steel ones, and the filter guard slips over the intake, so baby shrimp can't get through that. It's like a fine stainless steel mesh. I've got a few in stock of those. I can't put my hands on them. I can usually find anything in here, but I can't put my hands on those at the moment, but I do sell them. So that they're literally a stainless steel guard that slides over the intake, and they come in various sizes depending on the size of pipe you have. I think mine are, the ones I use, are 16mm, but yeah, you can use those. They're fine. They're fine. External filters are fine for shrimp tanks, but you must have a guard. I see a lot of people having shrimp tanks using fluval flexes. I have used them, and in my opinion, shrimp get behind them. I believe somebody makes a filter guard for those to stop them going into the weir system. But if you're blocking a weir that's intended to be a weir and skim the surface of the water, what's the point of a filter guard? And that's just my opinion, So hope you've enjoyed it. It's longer than I anticipated it being, but I thought it would be a really short one, the filter one, but it's probably going to be longer than I anticipated. So I'll put a card up here for the previous one in this series, and the end screen will have the series, so it'll go to the playlist for this series. This will be episode 4. I think I've got one, maybe 2 more in this, what was going to be a mini series, but it's ended up going to be 6 or 7 episodes. So hope you've enjoyed it. If you're not a subscriber, hit the subscribe button. My stats say that over 70% of people that watch the channel aren't subscribers. It's free, and it massively helps us to create content. It's growth of the channel. It gets us to that position where we can grow, help you guys do bigger and better things. It's in my interest, but it's in your interest too. And the big thing is it's free. Click the subscribe button. Massively helps us. Thank you.